Hi, welcome to this NVivo class. NVivo is a software that can assist you with qualitative data analysis. It's a tool for doing qualitative data analysis. So I'll come back to the tool part later. First of all, qualitative data analysis, it's something that's useful for all of you. Whether you're going to do a literature review for your dissertation, or you're going to do a document study, or you're going to do interviews, you're all going to analyze qualitative data. So in this session, I will explain how to use NVivo for doing so. I really want to stress the fact that NVivo is a tool that assists you with qualitative data analysis. In other words, NVivo is not going to do the analysis for you. The process of analyzing your data, meaning the kinds of questions you ask to your data, this is something that's determined by the researcher, and it's informed by the research questions you have, or the hypothesis you have, or the conceptual or theoretical framework you're using for your research. Yeah? So you're going to follow different steps in qualitative data analysis, and NVivo can help you doing so in a much more efficient way. It has a lot of features. I'm not going to explain them all here. I'm just going to focus on the basics, or the most important ones, the ones I think that you will all use, or you can all use for your master's dissertation. This being said, it's quite a time investment if you don't know the program to get used to it, to get acquainted with it. So it's really up to each and every individual to think about whether you think it's worth the investment. In any case, if you have large volumes of data, it's a great tool. It really helps you process everything much faster, much more efficient. If you have small amounts of data, you may actually do the same. You may actually analyze your data in very similar ways, but just not using this software as a tool. You can organize and analyze your data just using Word documents or using Excel files or whatever. Yeah. Um, but another thing I wanted to say about this session focusing on the basis is that if you want to know more, if you want to explore further, I would really recommend you to go to the NVivo website. Oh, sorry, here it is. Yes. So QSR NVivo, Google QSR NVivo. It's a very good website, very user friendly. You have a help bar here at the top, in which you can search for keywords, or if you're stuck somewhere, they have a great step-by-step approach. They show you very clearly what the different features are, what they are used for, and what you can do with them. So in using NVivo, you can find everything about the key concepts, about how to code your files, etc., etc. So everything I'm going to explain basically. The website also has good tutorials. So if you want to have more details on some particular feature of the program, please go and have a look at the website. So I'm first of all going to give you an overview of the different features of NVivo before going more in depth into some of the most common features that you can use. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to open my NVivo project. So if you have installed NVivo on your computer, you have to go to the program, open it. In my case, there's several recent projects I've been working on. So the last one here is the NVivo class. So I'll open this one, and here it is. So what we see here, on the left, we see the navigation view. So in the navigation view, you see the different features, data codes, cases, node search. These are the ones we're going to discuss. And then on the top here, you also have different options, like things you can do with the data. But let's look at that later. Let's start with the different features here: data, codes, cases, nodes, search. So the data, there we go. So here you store all the different data that you import into your project. They can be of many different natures. So here you import what's called in NVivo files. And files, they can be academic articles, they can be newspaper articles. So what you see here is, here are two articles that I already imported into this project for the sake of this exercise. So the first one is an academic article, the second one is a newspaper article. But you can also import pictures, videos, even whole databases from programs like SurveyMonkey, from Mendeley, from EndNote. So NVivo is actually constantly improving and is launching new versions almost every year, which every time include new features. So one of the more recent features, for example, allows you to very easily import Twitter feeds that you can then also analyze as data. Yeah, so it really takes looks at what at the tools that are used often now in research and tries to create a way for analyzing them with this software program. So files can be of many different nature, and you can classify your files according to the type of file that you have imported. So under file classifications, that's where you're going to classify your files. That's where you're going to determine what type of file this is. As I said, what I have here is a journal article, an academic journal article, and a newspaper article. So I could classify these files as journal article, newspaper article, respectively. Why would I want to do that? It can be useful later in the analysis if you want to start analyzing, for instance, what different types of files say about a particular topic. So suppose you want to do a discourse analysis on poverty. You could search in newspaper articles for poverty, you could search in Facebook posts for poverty, and you could compare and contrast how this issue is portrayed in these different types of files. So that's where it can be very important to, from the beginning, to classify your files so that you can use this information later on. So the files classification is like the metadata about your files. You find one standard file classification that NVivo gives you, and that's the reference, so the full reference for the file. If you, for instance, import a file from EndNote, then it will automatically fill out all these different attributes for you. So the author, the year, the title, so everything that you do in a reference list or a bibliography basically will be imported here. Okay, let's briefly, the third one is externals. These are files that matter for your project, but you do not want to import them for one reason or another. Maybe because the file size is too big. So what you create here is you create a link to an item that's external to your project, but it can still be included in the analysis you make within your project. Yeah. It's not very important to use this because actually most data sources can now be imported in NVivo. There is now also a recent feature for importing the content of web pages. So moving on from data, let's now look at the codes. Codes are very crucial. Yeah. Codes is where you move from the raw data, the empirical data, to a conceptualization. It's kind of an intermediary step between the data and the theory. So this is where you start to build theory. A code is actually like a box or a container in which you store different parts of your data that have something in common. For instance, if you're interested in gender inequality, you might have a box for intra-household dynamics between men and women within the household. You may have another box for the gender division of labor. You may have another box for, I don't know, access to political institutions. So depending on what you're interested in, you can create these boxes and you can gather all the pieces of your data that speak to this particular issue in this box. Yeah? So the pieces of your data can be sentences from an academic article together with like one phrase from an interview, together with one paragraph from a newspaper article, together with a picture, for instance. So these are in NVivo. In NVivo, these are called nodes actually. So the thematic categorizations of your data are called the nodes. You have a different type of code here, and that's a relationship. And a relationship is actually also something that gives meaning to your data in the sense that it defines how two items in your project are linked. Because this is what we're looking for in the data, right? We're looking for patterns, we're looking for similarities, we're looking for contradiction in the data. So a relationship is something that links project item A to project item B. It can be a node linked to a file. It can be one file linked to another file, etc. Yeah? So these patterns can also be very meaningful to your project. And the relationship types, here you define the type of the relationship. One standard, the standard type that you find here is an association. So that merely means that two project items are associated. You're not defining in which direction this relationship goes, but you may define other relationship types. So you may create your own types here. And then, for instance, if you're interested in an impact in how phenomenon A impacts upon phenomenon B, then you might create a one-directional relationship, for instance, like an arrow saying A impacts on B. So coding is something that you do also when you're not using NVivo. It's actually taking parts of the data together and categorizing them. Now, there's different approaches for how to do this. So as I said, this is often informed by your research question, which means that you start with a particular topic in mind, you start with a particular conceptual framework, and based on that, you already have certain nodes that you assume will be relevant to your data. So in the case of gender inequalities, you assume that the gender division of labor will be somehow important to this problem of inequalities. Yeah? So then you can define gender division of labor as a node from the beginning, which is a deductive approach. You start from the theory, yeah? You define your codes, and then you're going to test whether your data confirm or not this code. The other approach is an inductive approach, where you start from the raw data and you actually let the data speak to you and you discover new nodes within the data. I talk about codes and nodes because some people also just use codes for nodes, but here the distinction they make is between the nodes as a thematic categorizations and a relationship as kind of the link between two items. So inductive, deductive approach often in practice you would use a combination of both. So you would start with certain notes based on your research question and your theory, your conceptual framework. But while going through the data, you would also discover new notes, and you might delete some of the previous notes, you might create new ones, etc. So it's kind of a continuous process that you're doing here. Okay, let's go to the next one, which is cases. The cases are the units of analysis that you use. These can also be different types of cases. You can, for instance, look at persons. If you have done interviews with particular persons in the community, if you're interested, for instance, in a development project that has been implemented in the community and you want to have the views of different beneficiaries, you might interview person A, person B, person C, and you might create a case for each of these persons. Why can that be important? Because you can also create attributes for these cases, which means storing social demographic information about the cases. For example, person A is a 37-year-old female and person B is a 20-year-old male. Now, in a later stage, again, when you're going to interrogate your data, you can ask your data, okay, what did females aged between 30 and 40 say about this particular topic? Yeah. I already want to stress at this point that you cannot ask these questions to NVivo unless you have given NVivo this information. So if you didn't store the attributes of these individuals, you will never be able to retrieve this information, of course. Yeah? If you didn't code what person A said under a particular node, then NVivo will not know that what person A said in that interview was actually about the gender division of labor. So if you haven't coded it as gender division of labor, it will not be able to find this information later on. Yeah. So that's again stressing that the program is not going to do the work for you. Well, anyway, so cases can be individuals. They might also be groups of persons. So if you're interested in comparing the views of farmers, you might even take the farmers as a case. For instance, if you have interviewed them together in a focus group. But it can also be organizations. If you're interested in studying the programs of two different NGOs, these two NGOs can be cases. What you see in this project is a country, Indonesia. So here I might be interested in comparing different countries, which is why I created Indonesia as a case. Yeah? Now, what type of case this is will be defined under case classifications. So here you define the types of cases that you have. So here you would have things like person, organization, district, municipality, or here country for Indonesia. Under country, you can define different attributes. But maybe we will look at that later. Okay, someone has joined me here. Should be in bed by now. Yes. Sorry, I'm a bit distracted there. Okay, so cases are the units of analysis, can be persons, organizations, countries, whatever. And here also you can classify them and you can use this information to do more advanced analysis afterwards. Next feature here are notes. Notes are important in the sense that they contain reflections by the researcher on the research process. For instance, memos. Memos are the It's the place where you're going to collect your ideas, conceptual ideas or methodological ideas about the process of analyzing your data. It's very important to keep track of this process, of the different steps you have gone through, if only for reasons of transparency and validity, actually. So, and this is one of the ways in which other researchers or your supervisor can check how you carried out the analysis and which different steps you took. So this really strengthens the validity of your research if you can keep memos on that kind of documenting the different steps that you took in your analysis. I'm not going to go into framework matrices. These are matrices in which you can also organize some of your thoughts. Annotations are very short notes, like reminders or things that you have to follow up on, just short comments in the margin. And then see also links are also a way to refer to other items in your project. The next feature is the search function. So I already said that as a next step in your analysis, you will be asking questions to your data, and that these questions are informed by the things you want to know, so by your research question, but also the things that you learn from your data. So there's different types of questions that you can ask here, and I will also show you the kind of basic ones. Then we have maps. Maps are also ways in which you can present your analytical ideas, contrast, link, compare different parts of your project, and they are visualizations of your analytical thoughts about the data. There's many different possibilities. I cannot show them all, actually. The last one is output. So this is where you can now create reports or extracts that you can extract from NVivo and that you can use in the writing up of your data later on. All right, so this was a quick overview of the different features. In the next video, I will, on the basis of this particular project example, I will show you how to use these different features, and then you can also try to do it yourself. Thank you very much for watching this.